Our next session will focus on the role of licensed capital markets participants in Ethiopia. In this segment, our experts will discuss the crucial role that the licensed participants play in developing a robust capital market in Ethiopia. We'll begin with two distinguished speakers, Mr. Tewodros Sisay, who will discuss the licensing journey in Ethiopia, and Ms. Rina Hicks, who will provide insight into investment banking within the Kenyan capital market ecosystem. Following these presentations, we'll have a panel discussion with some of the top minds in the industry. Our moderator for this panel is Mr. Sirak Salamon, Senior Legal Advisor of the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority. The panelists for this discussion will be Mr. Tewodros Sisay, Ms. Rina Hicks, Mr. Estifanos Melkamu, Director of Licensing at the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, and Ms. Mary Njuguna, Principal Specialist for Capital Markets at the FSD Africa. Let's give a warm welcome to our moderators and panelists as they take the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sirak Solomon. I'm a Senior Legal Advisor with the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority. I'll be moderating this session. Having given it some thought, we thought instead of the speech and it being late in the afternoon and before coffee and break, we thought we just go into the moderating session, but we have each panelist kind of do a short, maybe speeches too broad to define it, but a short kind of statement on what they do, how what they do is relevant to this session, and maybe dive into the service provision area and the capital markets. But before that, maybe I say a few words on why this session is important and key to the summit. I don't think Marlon is here. I think he left. He said earlier this morning that his was going to be the best session. Okay, so we're going to have to see about that. So the idea of a lot of times when we talk about capital markets in Ethiopia, we've been doing it for many years now. And so I think Dr. Tlaun said earlier this morning that the same people are saying the same thing over and over, but now it's for real. So we're doing the summit not in preparation next year, but the exchange is actually going to start work. CSD is going to start work, and the products are already coming to the market. There's a large ones already in the market, which means it's actually here now. So one of the key kind of pillars of a capital market is the service providers. So the service providers are the institution, the people that bring the product to the market. So you can have all the market platforms, the exchange, the CSD. You can have all the regulation you want. If you don't have the people who bring the product to the market, there is no capital market. So that's plain and simple. So for the banks, for many of you with whom we've done presentations over and over, thinking that this thing, of course, they've been talking about it for a while, it's not coming. It is here. Service provision and its impact on especially the financial sector, which is going through a lot of transformation. You've heard from the governor, heard from the state minister, and the impact the new kind of reforms are going to have on these large institutions. Capital market is going to be a key, part of that reform process, and it's going to affect all these institutions. And the service provision area is one of the areas that needs a lot of work, and we know that. We've been doing a lot of work on that area, and we're here today to convince the ones that are applying to kind of rush and apply now, and the ones that are doing through the kind of preliminary process to kind of really up their game. So for our session, We have a couple of service providers here. We have Teddy from Deloitte, the first licensee in Ethiopia as an investment advisor. We have Rina from Faida Investment Banking in Kenya. So we'll get good advice on what these services are and how we think they'll be relevant in a country like Ethiopia and where we are. And Mary's going to walk us through maybe from her past experience as a regulator and now with FSD Africa and as part of one of the team that helped us develop the regulatory framework for service providers on the relevance of service providers to this capital market. Estifanos lastly, but not least, obviously, is the director of licensing. He's going to walk us through kind of the regime. So Teddy, I'll start with you. Maybe talk about the investment advisory space that you were in Ethiopia, and then maybe give examples of other transactions in other countries in Africa that you've done, what kind of the work entails, what does an investment advisor do?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to see everyone sitting here. Usually it's very, very difficult to speak after lunch, and then especially after 3 p.m. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you, ECMA, for the invitation as well. My name is Tewodros. I'm a partner at Deloitte. I lead our economic advisory unit across Africa. I also lead our corporate finance team, which includes the equity capital markets team in East Africa. As Sirak mentioned, we are the first licensed investment advisor in the country. In any country that you operate in, more than 150 countries, we have a license from the capital market authorities, and then we work very closely with the capital market authorities as we advise companies in IPO and related services. Maybe I can touch upon what Deloitte is doing in Ethiopia. So we have a fully fledged office that we have been saying it's going to be open, but now it's open. You are most welcome to come and visit. So we have the M&A team, the advisory team, technology, which includes cybersecurity team working out of Ethiopia. I think maybe one of the key questions that I can answer is why Deloitte decided to become a licensed investment advisor in Ethiopia. The first thing is, it has been said this morning, and we have been saying it in the past as well, we really believe in the Ethiopian market potential. There is significant value that can be created in Ethiopia, and we are here to support our clients handhold through this value creation services. And one of the value creation services is the capital formation through the IPO and related services. Our M&A team supports our clients through that journey. So for any advisor to become a trusted advisor, especially in a market that is regulated where we are now, Capital Market Authority plays a key role by licensing investment advisors such as ourselves. The second thing is, David was mentioning earlier, one of the key things for any capital market development is, one is investor education, two is talent and capacity building. By setting up the office here, we are committing that we will support not only the economic growth through supporting our clients grow, but through investor education as well as talent and capacity building to companies. Maybe let me touch upon on the role of investment advisors. A lot of people come and ask me if we are investment banks. We are not investment banks. Rina will explain what an investment bank does. We are investment advisors. What does an investment advisor does? Investment advisor handholds the company through the IPO journey. An IPO journey is a very complex and a very expensive journey. So we take our clients through that IPO journey. First, of course, through the initial phases of the work, the IPO readiness work, and then next, implementing some of the recommendations that come out of the IPO readiness work. Second is helping our clients set up a PMO, the project management office. This is where the transaction advisor manages the whole process. So we bring in both licensed and unlicensed advisors to support our clients. So one of the key players in that is investment bankers, brokers, auditors, and others. So I'll come maybe back to the licensed and unlicensed investors that we work with. Second is we make sure that a transaction is in accordance with the proclamations and directives of ECMA, and then also the listing rules of the stock exchange. So we make sure that our clients are comply with that. We guide the company board and executives through or advising on an optimal IPO strategy. We also support the implementation of the various tasks from corporate governance, transformation through human capital, finance, and other areas to make sure that that company is ready for listing. We coordinate a lot of the documentation, liaising with the Capital Market Authority, including the registration document. When you look at the Ethio Telecom offering, for example, everyone saw the prospectus, but behind prospectus there are so many documents that we had to work through and then make sure that it gets approved through the Capital Market Authority. So that's the role of the investment advisor. Of course, supporting the preparation of prospectus with the legal advisors, with the accountants, with the auditors. We also provide valuation reports. Maybe if you allow me, I can just touch up on one point. So I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of different parties involved in an IPO exercise. This is why we say it's complex. I'm not trying to sell Deloitte services, but it is a complex journey for companies. And it's also a very expensive journey as well. So when an investment advisor is hired at the first instance, so the investment advisor brings the licensed and unlicensed advisors. The unlicensed investors advisors include the tax structuring advisors, professional firms that prepare historical financial statements. These are different from auditors. Usually the financial statements prepared by the companies are not really fit for listing purposes. So we bring in other professional service companies or accounting firms to support the companies to prepare historical financial statements. There is a need for financial PR, so we also bring in those financial PR companies. These now, in line with the auditors, legal advisors, the brokers, and investment advisors, make up the group that advises a business to go into listing. So when we received the investment advisory license, everyone was saying you are the only one to dominate the market. But this is just to show you that we actually work with a group of advisory firms to deliver value to clients to go into listing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dedi. So just to build on that, maybe Rina, if you could talk about investment banking. What does it look like in Kenya, and some of the work that you do with your firm, just to give a flavor of the services.
Sure, thank you, Sirak. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rina Hicks, and I'm the Operations Director at Faida Investment Bank. I also head the Corporate Finance Unit, which does the investment banking side of the business. Investment banking has changed so much in Kenya over the years. I mean, you know, we initially only registered broker-dealers or stockbrokers. And so all we did as stockbrokers is invest in the stock market, in the bond market, on behalf of our customers. But as an investment bank, it has opened up so much more for us. So as a business, we've been able to grow in such a big way in terms of being able to advise companies that are looking to raise capital, whether that capital is debt or equity. We also offer business valuations. And so if a company, for example, is looking to sell its shares and they want to invite investors to participate in buying their own shares, we can just do business valuations. Or maybe they've received an offer from a company that's looking to buy them out or acquire them. Then we can do a business valuation and a fairness opinion to let them know whether the offer they have received is fair or not. We also participate in mergers and acquisitions. The thing about investment banking is that it opens such a huge wide opportunity for financial institutions to offer an array of services, including underwriting. And underwriting is where, for example, like now we have the Ethio Telecom offer. If you have a big balance sheet, you could tell Ethio Telecom, look, I will buy or stand ready to buy 50% of the offering. So I'll buy 5% of the shares you're offering. In case it's not successful, we shall sell our shares later. And so that's underwriting. Basically, you give security to the issuer to let them know that whatever happens, their issue will be successful and they'll be fully subscribed. And so the services are many. As Faida, we have seen real opportunities across the region. We opened a brokerage in Rwanda. We were actually the first brokerage that was licensed in Rwanda. We are called Faida Securities Rwanda. And we work with others in Tanzania and Uganda through collaborations in terms of being able to offer services to customers in those markets by working together. So you find that there's brokerages that exist that may not have an investment banking arm or financial, research analysts who are CFA charter holders, for example, and we will then collaborate with them to be able to do valuations and IPOs and things like that, or just capital raises. You might look at Kenya, and I think there's somebody who mentioned it in the morning. You might look at Kenya and look at the stock exchange and be like, oh my gosh, it's such a small market. But Kenya is quite big also in the private capital markets. So you have activity on the stock exchange, but you also have a lot of activity in the private capital markets. And so it's been quite an interesting time for us. We're also excited about Ethiopia. And currently, Faida we've been coming now for the past 1 year, working as advisors, trying to work with, as consultants to help people see how can they take advantage of this opportunity within the capital markets space in Ethiopia. And we're fairly excited about what's going to be happening.
Thank you so much, Rina. So maybe I'll go to Mary next. Maybe we can talk about what, as a regulator, we can do to kind of promote the development of service providers, and maybe align that discussion with how our directive was designed, because you were part of the team that helped put that together. So give us an idea of how extensive or not so extensive compared to other countries the provisions are.
Thank you, Sirak, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. Ethiopia capital market is close to our heart as FSD Africa, because we have been involved in at several points in supporting the Capital Market Authority to develop the regulatory framework, certain aspects of it, including the licensing directives that I was involved in particularly. So I mean, just very briefly, I think as Sirak mentioned, in my previous life I was a regulator actually in Kenya, and was involved in actually implementing these licensing regulations in the Kenyan context. So I think for me, the work that we did with the Capital Market Authority in Ethiopia was very close to my heart, because it was very relevant and I could relate quite a bit. But let me just say that maybe I'll just take several steps back to say that, of course, a capital market, like other sectors in the other subsectors of the financial sector, are really built on trust. And I mean, trust drives everything about how robust a capital market is and how it continues to grow and build confidence. And so when we look at the kind of regulatory framework and what the regulators can do to build a pool of strong, credible intermediaries, I think there are several points there. One is regulators have a role to make sure that their regulatory framework on licensing is very clear so that potential licensees are clear about what is required. And by the way, when we look at the process that, of course, the ECMA team went through, there was a lot of comparison even with other markets and just looking at what are some of those requirements. And by the way, when you look at regulatory frameworks for licensing of intermediaries, there are very many common threads in the directives that were developed, whether it is about looking at the kind of persons who run the various licensees, whether you're looking at their qualifications or looking at certain assessment of whether these persons behind entities to be licensed are fit and proper, whether you're looking at capital requirements, looking at risk management practices that are put in place, or even looking at the kind of code of conduct that these licensees have to comply with. When you look at the Ethiopian directives and several other directives, whether it's in Kenya, Nigeria, many markets, including other markets outside of Africa, there are very many common threads, as I've mentioned, whether it's on the capital requirements, fit and proper requirements, and several of those. And I think that just goes back to the point that I'm mentioning about the fact that capital markets are built on trust. So the entities that are seeking a license should demonstrate that they have the capacity, not just in terms of financial capacity, but also in terms of expertise to be able to offer the service, as well as IT, as well as having in place the right internal controls. Because I think from our own experience in Kenya, when there have been failed intermediaries, what comes to question is, the robustness of how some of those licensees were operating. So I find that the licensing directives are quite in line with other, licensing requirements in various other markets. But I must say that because of the stage at which Ethiopia is in terms of development of its capital market, there are very contextualized nuances around the licensing regime. When you look at license categories like securities digital brokers, that's new in various markets. I think Ethiopia, in various ways, Ethiopia has leapfrogged several other markets, or even just having upfront license categories for robo-advisors. Again, that is, taking advantage of, the opportunity to leapfrog and take advantage of digitization. So I think I'd say that, the other thing for regulators, aside from making it clear in terms of the regulatory framework, is also being facilitative. I know the proclamation says, like many other enabling and legislation for capital market regulators in Africa, that the regulator has a responsibility to both regulate and develop the market. So what that means is that, of course, on the one hand, there's the gatekeeping role, there's a supervisory role, but there's also the role to facilitate market growth by building the pool of licensed entities. And I think with that, I'm sure as the regulator continues with the work, is to really work with the market. At the point when the market is, at this stage really, there's a lot of testing of new directives, and there's an opportunity there to learn from those experiences, and there's an opportunity for the regulator to be facilitative. I think the last thing I'll say is making it easy for the applicants to come to market includes, as has been said many times before, capacity building, awareness raising, and many practical steps which I know that the authority has already taken in terms of putting out checklists or, just easy Q&As that potential licensees can be able to follow to understand what is required of them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mary. So I think a good segue to the question I'm going to ask Estifanos. So Estifanos, as the Director of Licensing, maybe walk us through a very high level what the regulatory framework for licensing looks like, and then talk about the application process.
And good afternoon, everyone. So in the regulatory framework, I think one of the priorities of Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, even before it becomes authority at the project inception time, the priority was to establish the necessary regulatory framework. So one of the areas that we started to develop a regulatory framework was on the service providers. So the licensing and supervision directive was the first directive the authority issued. It was back in January this year. So the regulatory framework for service providers is the main one is the proclamation. So the proclamation is, as we all know, the foundation of the whole capital market ecosystem. And one of the sections, one of the parts, particularly part 6 of the proclamation, exclusively discussed about service providers. So based on the proclamation, we have issued the licensing and supervision directive. So the proclamation and the directive are the key regulatory frameworks that establish the whole thing about licensing and service providers. So just to briefly go deep into the directive's content. So the licensing directives clearly lists down the major activities, the whole activities that requires a license from the authority. Those capital market activities that needs to be engaged in only after securing a license from the authority. So in addition, it also lists down the requirements. It provides the requirements. What are the key requirements to get a license? And also, it also enumerates, what are those service providers. And as Mary mentioned, there are about 15 categories of licenses, starting from, the basics one, the traditional capital market service providers you all know, like the advisors, and also like brokers, investment banks. And also the directive also includes some, contemporary, recently coming service categories like the digital sub-brokerages, the robo-advisories. So it has, I think, all the things in terms of licensing. So the other thing, I think the regulatory framework covers it, the responsibilities, obligations of those service providers in terms of their operation, in terms of their relation, their engagement with their clients, in terms of their relation with the authority. So it also, provide the code of conduct, how they should interact with their clients. So I think in terms of regulatory framework, both the proclamation and the directives provides all the necessary legal frameworks, so that based on that we have already started to give the license, and we have already gave 2 licenses, 2 investment advisors. So I think you also mentioned about the application process. I think the application process aims to ensure that the authority gets all the information from the applicants, to enable it to decide that only qualified and competent service providers come on the market. And also it also aims to make the application process smooth for the applicants. So we have like a pre-application evaluation procedure, so that applicants can evaluate themselves, their readiness in terms of the requirements, so that it helps them to know their readiness before they commit their resources, before they come to the market. So I think in terms of the application process, it should be the least of worries for the applicants, because we are there to guide them in every step of the application. So I think these are the main regulatory frameworks in the application process.
Thank you so much, Estifanos. So I'm gonna continue my questions from, I guess, left to right from my side, from your side. Estifanos, on continuation of what Mary was talking about in terms of the role of the regulator to do market development. So what kind of things are you guys doing as a department to help applicants, to help possible service providers enter the space?
Okay, thank you. So if you see the proclamation, one of the objectives of the authority is market development. So we, in addition to regulation, we want also, have more service providers into the market. We want more resources to come into the market. We want more investors to participate in the market. So in terms of service providers, I think we are doing a lot of market development activities. We are identifying potential capital markets service providers, so those potential companies who can be, investment banks or brokerage companies. So we are targeting them and we are reaching out to them. So we are doing a lot of engagements with them, especially those companies in the financial sectors, the banks, and the insurance companies. We believe that they are more near to the sector, and they have more potential to be, competent capital market service providers. So we have, a constant engagement with them. We are, supporting them as long as we can, and we have doing, a lot of trainings, a lot of orientations to their management, to even their board members, and also, I think most of the banks and even some of the insurance companies are working towards that, working to come into the market, to be like investment banks and service providers. Some of them are already onboarding external consultants, and many of them are already internal team that's working on to become a service provider. So our role as a regulator is, to guide them what the regulatory frameworks look like, what they should fulfill to come to the market. So we have constant engagement, and we have providing them guidance and trainings and orientations.
Thank you, Estifanos. So I'll go to Rina next. Maybe, Rina, so one of the services you touched upon earlier that you guys do is kind of advisory, and you've been playing that role in Ethiopia for the last year or so to possible investment advisors, brokers, so on and so forth. So maybe if you can touch on kind of how you see that role, like what position do you see these companies in? And what is the understanding level? And what kind of gap is there? What do we need to do to, kind of level the playing fields with regional players?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the challenges that we've seen and what we can do to level the playing field, I think there's a lack of understanding of the business opportunity. That's my view. Otherwise, we'd be having people knocking your doors down to make sure they get licenses. I think clarity around the opportunity that exists. As financial institutions, let me speak on behalf of, say, an investment bank, for example. On one hand, you're raising capital for an institution that's looking for money, for expansion, for growth. And then on the other hand, you're creating products that's enabling retailers, pension funds, institutions to find great investment opportunities. And so you have an opportunity to make money both ways. The opportunities are there and they're great. I think the other thing is that we have, because of not seeing it as a business opportunity, then you have institutions that sort of will send lower cadre staff to events such as this one, not take the seriousness in exploring the opportunities at a high level, from the board and the chair and the top management of the organizations. And so when that happens then, and you're trying to have a bottom-up approach in terms of coming into this opportunity, it'll take longer. But I'm glad to hear from Estifanos that we already have 2 licensed investment advisors, which is great, and I'm sure that's going to really help to kind of jumpstart the industry, because the reality, as you said, Sirak, is that it's happening now. Maybe that's half the issue, that it's taken a long time to come. I think the other thing is just to recognize that the options are many. The options and the opportunities to grow and make money as a financial institution are many. And I had mentioned some of those. There's investment advisory, there's broker dealers, there's underwriters, there's investment banks, there's issues around valuation, there's so many opportunities within that. They've talked about 15 licenses, but it's not about the licenses. I think if we can look at it from the opportunity of being able to raise your revenue sources for the financial institutions that are here, whether you're an insurance company or a bank, there's great opportunities. And so I think my call to action for those who are represented here is that don't make this one of those opportunities that you give the guys in the back office to look at. I think it's time for financial institutions to take this to the board and have this as a board decision so that decisions can be made quickly. The opportunities are great, not just for Ethiopia, but you can actually serve the region, because the East African region is fairly open to opportunities and to advisors from across the region. I mean, we have advisors who come into Kenya from different markets, including South Africa, including the US. And so the opportunities are great and they're wide. And so let's collaborate. And the opportunity to also collaborate with others such as ourselves is there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rina. So I think I'm gonna harp on this opportunity stuff. Sorry, Teddy. I hope you know how these panels work. We kind of work out the questions and then come prepared, but I'm gonna throw a bone at Teddy. I'm gonna switch up the questions. So Teddy, actually, just to build on what Rina just said, maybe if you can talk about how you see the Ethiopian opportunity as somebody with the skin in the game, somebody who's on the ground and put your name and your face and risk, by getting the first license in a market you didn't know was coming in November, right? So, but what are the opportunities? If we can talk about that with the audience, would be very helpful.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sirak. So we started investing in Ethiopia, I think end of 2021, where we started the first IPO masterclass, a 5 days masterclass. Then we did additional 2 masterclasses throughout the time. We worked through with our clients, making sure that some of these opportunities they understand to grab it as well. I'm happy to say right now we have 5 live mandates that we are working on, whether it's a public offer, whether it's an IPO, or advising our clients to become a service provider within the capital market area. So, I mean, there is a lot of opportunities, as Rina mentioned. We have very large companies. I think it's also from maybe underestimating or lack of understanding the size of Ethiopian companies in the East Africa, the Africa context. We have very, very large companies in Ethiopia that can actually have significant market cap and a listed company and a stock exchange. Not only these large companies also have an opportunity to do dual listing in other countries as well. There is a huge opportunity for these companies to raise hard currency through that stage. So as you mentioned, I think for us we invested significantly. We brought in a team that has experience, especially in the last 5 years. We've done more than 25 African company listings in London Stock Exchange and New York Stock Exchange. So that team has been providing services now in Ethiopia. So it's a good opportunity for our clients. It's a good opportunity for our talent and capacity building as well.
Thank you so much, Teddy. So Mary, I'll end the questions, I guess, with you. What can Ethiopia learn from other emerging markets in developing local? Obviously, the Ethiopian market is open, the capital market is open to anybody. Deloitte is not an Ethiopian entity. Anybody can get a license. But we definitely, as a regulator, we want to promote local companies as well. We think that's sustainable and it serves the need of the market in terms of kind of speaking the language, making sure the client and the advisor understand each other, so that we understand the context and we want to make sure that the local need is addressed, and we want local players in this space. Having said that, maybe what are the tools various other emerging markets have used to develop the service industry? Thanks.
Thank you, Sirak. I think the Ethiopian capital market is in a unique position because it has the benefit to learn from even other markets in the region and maybe beyond, and their mistakes. I think I was in a forum yesterday where last week, where one of the heads of a regulator, regional regulator, was saying the same thing, that Ethiopia is in a unique position because they are willing to share with them everything that has failed in their market so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. So I think, certainly that's one of the opportunities that exists in terms of learning from other regulators, what worked, what didn't work. And I think even what Rina has mentioned about what they are doing in terms of, there's an opportunity for cross-pollination to help build that, awareness of the opportunities, not just the opportunities, but the various routes to enter the market, because I think there are very many. And so just leveraging on those kind of opportunities, whether it's peer learning at the regulator level, even at the exchange level, at any other SRO level, and because there are many players within the ecosystem and there's a lot to learn from other markets. But I think it's important to, as you mentioned, take into account the local context and to build that out, because I think it's important in terms of sustainability, having a pool of local players. And I mean, the many things that are unique, even when we talk about the way the structure of this market is likely to pan out. We've talked earlier about how retail investor participation is likely to take front stage, unlike several other markets. And then the opportunities there as well that you can seize based on your own digitization journey, again, learning broadly. So I think there's a lot to learn from the capital markets themselves, but I think capital markets don't exist in a vacuum. And therefore just understanding how, even in other markets, how the wider financial sector economic reforms have played a part in how the capital market has grown. I think it's always good to be alive to that fact and of course marry that to the local context. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So we'll go to the Q&A session. We'll take a few questions and come back later on. If you can make the questions short, we'll try to take as many questions as we can until our time ends. But just make them questions and then make them short. And please ask the questions. Thank you. If you can tell us your name and if you were from an institution, what institution you came from.
Okay, thank you. My name is Makonnen. I am from Development Bank of Ethiopia. This is my first exposure to the concept of this capital market. So I first apologize if my questions are silly to the floor. My first question is that the concept of investment bank is raised in relation to this capital market, and I am a bit confused with this, with the formal investment bank, and I need a brief explanation between the difference between capital investment bank in concept of this capital market and the formal financial markets. The second one is, do formal banks or regular banks need to have their own investment banks in the concept of stock market to trade their shares in the capital market? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kalkidan. I'm afraid I'm just a very skeptical accountant. My question is to Tewodros. I'm happy to hear that investment advisory services are coming along well. My concern is it's also something I see in my profession, is the lack of data in Ethiopia's ecosystem. We don't have much of financial statements present or any kind of information present. So I'm just wondering, how does Deloitte go about it in managing this challenge? And I see the government has done quite a lot of commendable work in ensuring there's a very robust regulatory framework in place, and other initiatives as well have been taken by the government. So I see that concern has been to some extent managed. Maybe I think one of the difficulties Deloitte and the team might be facing is on advising on exit strategy, right? I know that would be the first concern for any investor. Although we've got the dollar exchange liberalization that has opened up quite a lot of things for us, so that does answer some of their concern, but is that still a lingering concern from the investor side? Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of people here, so there has to be more questions. We'll take one or two more questions and then come back. There's somebody on this side.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I would like to thank the Ethiopian government and the institutions playing this role of opening up Ethiopia to the world, of course, and I also would like to thank the people even before who expressed their willingness to help Ethiopia. These are all good, but I think Ethiopia is opening up and reforming too fast, probably too fast. Probably it has its own good. It was only the first kind of real democratic system close to in that direction. We didn't practice that before. So that even in the political reforms, there are real push to liberalize things, and this capital market development is only possible on those grounds. In principle, the government is reforming in that direction, but underground or it is developed on the background of something not very suitable for that. So to avoid the risk of participatory bodies following their own benefits and probably killing this initiative too short. What different players, the government side, the banking side, and the companies, SMEs, the advisors, the security advising companies, and our foreigner friends who are here to help us, what should they do together, including if it is necessary to postpone some kind of short-term benefits to make the system more sustainable and more beneficiary in the long run. What bankers, for example, should do, what bankers and the government should do together, what private bankers, 2-3 together, they need to do together instead of going alone. You can add other players into this, so my question is, so in general, what these players need to do to make this system sustainable and growing over long term?
Thank you so much. I think I got you questions, and you can tell me later on if I'm missing something. But how do you make sure conflict of interest issues and sustainability is addressed by creating an ecosystem? I think you answered some of the question yourself, but I think we'll try to do our best to answer your question. There is somebody here.
Thank you.
That's the last question. Let's answer these, and then if we have time, we'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question is, from where you're sitting, my name is Jalili, and I come from Meridium, an infrastructure investment fund here. So my question is, what are local banks doing right now in terms of making themselves more competitive, especially in the investment banking sector? Do you see interest from them, in terms of diversifying their...
From the local banks?
Local banks, exactly. And in order to do that, I presume there will be a lot of need for local talent as well. And in your view, how much of that is existing currently in Ethiopia? And if it's not enough, what roles are you playing from where you stand? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good questions. Thank you so much. So the development bank question, I'm sorry, I missed your name. It wasn't clear when you said it. What is an investment bank? What does it do? Maybe a good way to explain this I have found is just to compare it with what a retail bank does. I mean, that's probably the simplest way. And then do the retail banks, the commercial banks, do they need advisors to come to the market? Basically, those, maybe Rina, if you can take those. The skeptical accountant's question to Teddy. Teddy, you got that? So the third question, maybe Mary, you can take that. So, obviously, the whole purpose of a regulated capital market is to create an ecosystem where all the entities that you mentioned come together in a highly formal, regulated market. So the banks, the government, the development partners, the issuers, investors, service providers all come in a regulated climate, and that's how you address it. Maybe if you can build on that, I think that would be great. And the last one, maybe Estifanos, and I'll touch on that later on the retail banks. So how prepared are they to basically participate as investment banks and address, maybe touch on local talent pool? Is it available? If not, what can we do as an authority to help develop that section? Thank you. Maybe Rina.
Okay. With the question around investment banking, I'll take your advice, Sirak, and start with what a commercial bank is. So a commercial bank receives money from people and takes deposits in terms of savings. Whether it's a savings account, a current account, you receive money from others. And then the second role is to lend money out. So primarily that's the main thing. You receive money or receive deposits and pay out, or rather issue loans. Now, an investment bank does not take deposits, and we do not issue loans. An investment bank has generally these three functions. The first one is stockbroking, where we trade on behalf, well, not all investment banks offer all these, but I'll just share ours. So there's a stockbroking arm that can sit within an investment bank, where you trade or transact on behalf of your customers. So investors will come and ask you, buy me Ethio Telecom shares. And so you go ahead and buy those shares or sell them. Or they want to buy a commercial paper, or they want to buy a bond. And so as the broker or the broking arm of the investment bank, you assist them to do that. The other arm that the investment bank has is what we call corporate finance advisory. So those who sit as investment banking companies that don't offer stockbroking will offer corporate finance advisory. So that's where we sit with issuers or companies that are looking to raise capital and analyze them, understand their strategies, what they want to do in the future, why they need money, what they need it for, look at their accounts, see if they have sufficient cash flows to support what they're trying to raise, if it's debt, for example, carry out valuations if it's equity, and then help them to raise that money by creating instruments or securities that they'll be able to raise the money with. So those securities can be shares, those securities can be bonds, those securities can be commercial paper. So that's corporate finance advisory, which includes things like underwriting, things like fairness opinions. So that would fall under corporate finance advisory, even mergers and acquisitions. Then the last arm that we offer as an investment bank is what we call collective investment schemes. So we also act as fund managers as an investment bank with a license that we have, where we pool funds, taking money from different investors, retailers, institutions. We pool money together and invest in different funds. So there's funds called money market funds, there's funds that are called equity funds, fixed income funds. In Kenya, we have another one that's called a special fund, which we recently got a license for, an approval for last year as Faida Investment Bank. So these are different collective investment schemes. You can also issue REITs. So I know real estate is big in Ethiopia, and so as an investment bank, you can participate in the process of issuing a real estate investment trust that makes a building such as this one into a an opportunity where different ones of us can own a unit of this building. So those are just the opportunities within investment banking. So the second question around that was, do regular banks need to have their own investment bank in order to trade their own shares? The answer is no. I'm sure in a few days, once the public offer, I'm forgetting what those directives are called, but once the rules are out around public issues, now you will need to have an investment bank, but that investment bank doesn't have to be yourself. You can hire the services of an investment bank to help you list your shares either on an OTC or over-the-counter market, or on a securities exchange, the Ethiopian Securities Exchange. So you don't have to be an investment bank yourself. If you're an insurance company or a bank and you have shares and you want to trade those shares on an exchange, you can get the services of another investment bank. Allow me to, Sirak, just respond to the gentleman who was on that end asking about what do we do for in the long run. I think one of the things that we must do, especially banks, is first of all understand the different business opportunities, as I had said earlier, and create a strategy around those opportunities. Because if you don't, then it will be difficult for you to go for the long run. The other thing is to understand the regulations. What do they say? And how can we take advantage of the opportunities by understanding the regulations and what we can and cannot do? And then build talent. I think talent has also been mentioned. I think the third thing is you must build talent and carry this talent along with you from the beginning. So once you decide this is something we want to do, have the talent come on board as you are beginning the process of applying for whichever opportunity that you're looking to, or license that you're looking to apply for, including investing in this team, getting them CISI certified, and all the different training opportunities that exist. And then finally, I think it's just for banks to understand you're not in this alone. There's a lot of opportunities to collaborate with others, as I had said earlier, but also there's a lot of help from the Ethiopian Capital Markets Authority and the Ethiopian Stock Exchange in terms of just capacity building and guidance and hand-holding. I think they all are very highly incentivized to ensure that the capital markets does well. And so for those of you who come in early, you get a lot of support. And so you'll have not just an early mover advantage, but also the support of regulators in your market. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rina. So just to clear up on, that was an excellent 101 on investment banking. I don't think I could have done better. But just on the CIS, on the way our licensing works, CIS actually collective investment schemes have operators, and that's a separate license from investment banking. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks. Just to answer, I think, Kalkidan's question. Lack of data is a big concern for us as well. That's why it usually takes a little bit longer than the usual exercise in Ethiopia to take companies to the listing or public offers because of the many groundwork that need to be done, the finance transformation work that need to be done, and then also bringing other advisors to support clients. Earlier I was saying, as an investment advisor, so we work with various professional services. One is accountants to help companies prepare historical financial information. This HFI is very, very critical for the preparation of the prospectus. Even for investors to understand about the company, even to go through the regulatory approvals. So this is a very critical exercise that need to be done. Auditors also do a lot of work through this process. We have learned a lot and understand now where the audit firms and the accountant firms, companies are in terms of capacity. But this has been said so many times, we have to build capacity of our audit firms, our accounting firms. It's very, very critical. One of the issues that where we have data concern is because of the lack of capacity in service providers from that angle. The other is, I think, both auditors, external accountants, both external and internal accountants really need to understand the regulation where Rina was mentioning earlier. when you look at the regulation and what ECMA actually expects, with the objective of protecting investors and with the objective of providing clear information to investors, then you can actually see clearly what is required, and companies need to start preparing for that. So that's why usually if it takes 3 to 6 months for a listing process in other countries, usually it takes between 6 to 9 months or even 12 months or above, depending where the company is in terms of quality of information, capacity, corporate governance, and other things. The second question is I think about exit. Is exit still a concern for investors? I think after the reform that is happening in the country, if I'm not mistaken. It is still a concern. Of course, many of the investors that we are speaking, especially from foreign who are not invested in Ethiopia, the key concern is not about Ethiopia's potential. The key concern is not the size of the Ethiopian economy. The key concern is exits. How can we get money out of Ethiopia once we invest in the country? So the reform has helped, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done as well. We need to increase most of or implement most of that reform, as well as support the export sector and other sectors that would generate USD, and then, which is very critical, and then we cannot do it any other way. But as you said, the concern has been relatively easier as we speak over the last 3 months. But of course, this is not going to continue. We need to continue bringing in foreign currency to allow exits and build investor confidence.
Thank you, Teddy. Just to add on, I think it's on Friday morning, we have a 50-minute speech from Wazir Hikmet Abdullah, the previous head of Abbe, will make a speech. I suggest the skeptical accountant gonna participate in that session, and she's around if you want to ask her. She's the current head of FSD Ethiopia, so you can ask her about some of the work that has been done and is currently being done as well. Thank you. Mary, do I need to restate the question, or is that on the?
No, I think
we're opening up too much, and what are we doing to mitigate risk, basically, from the gentleman's question?
Thanks. I think that's a very important, very loaded question, but very important question, I think. And I think just to say two things, just going back to the role of a capital market, of course, within the entire financial sector, and in terms of the role it plays as a source of capital mobilization in an economy. So, of course, there's just so much outside of the capital market, the core capital market players, that affects how our capital market operates. So I think that's a very valid question. And there are many players, whether you're talking about, of course, the enabling environment in terms of policy, regulation, market infrastructure, issuers on the one side, investors on the other hand, and other market enablers like the intermediaries, as well as other ecosystem players, capacity building. So there's just so much. So anyway, I mean, beyond that, of course, in a wider context, issues around liberalization, relaxing, various policies, whether it's around capital controls, FX, and the rest of that, they all have an impact. I think the last thing also is the growth of the institutional investor base in terms of growing pools of pension funds and other institutional capital. Anyway, what I wanted to say really at the end of the day is we have found that it's very important to have like a long-term plan that kind of defines how a capital market intends to grow, kind of defining what is the vision of the capital market, and what are the steps that it will take to get there. And that may be a useful tool to consider for of course, for Ethiopia. It requires a lot of cross-sectoral collaboration across the financial sector, would need to be driven by the ministry because of the oversight that they have across the entire financial sector. But that's a tool that's useful, and it has been used in several markets. That may be one of the things that can be considered. But I think different ecosystem players are trying to achieve different things. The point is the overall objective really should be to grow the market so that it's able to mobilize capital for economic development. But I mean, I get the concern. I'm not so sure whether, I don't know, reforming too fast or too slow. I don't know. I don't know if there's any scientific answer to that question. But I think what I'd say is that I think Ethiopia is in a good trajectory because steps are being taken towards development of the capital market. And I think that's a very commendable thing. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. So I think the last question was already answered by Rina. So Estifanos, we save you from answering that. I know we're over our allotted time. Would you please thank my panelists for this session? Thank you very much. I think we're gonna have just a wrap up. Our Director General Hanna will wrap up the session for us. I hope you get to come and participate in the next 2 days. We'll have similar, very engaging sessions, and thank you for listening to us.
For sticking with us the whole day. I know we haven't given you a tea break yet, but if I'm here and if I'm only allowed to say one thing, I want everyone from IFC, Grace's team, AFDB, Minister of Finance, Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, I'm sure I haven't forgotten anyone. Please stand up who have helped setting up this summit together. We want to thank you. I believe it was a success, at least for today. So I want everyone to stand. Johannes, I see you outside. If you can please come. Grace and your team, please. Saron and your team. Our YP, FSD Africa, FSD Ethiopia. I'm so sorry, Victor. Thank you for standing up. Thank you so much. One last remark would be, we believe that we have laid the foundation for resilient, robust, and dynamic capital market in Ethiopia. But of course, acknowledging the challenge to it, it's a call for collaboration for all of you to make Ethiopia's capital market work. And I urge all of you in the financial sector, in consultancy, in different sectors, in education, to navigate where you can contribute to the Ethiopian capital market as we speak. And our doors are always open for you to come and ask questions. Our communications email address is on your booklet. Please write us an email. Please call us if you have any requests, any questions, how to be part of this capital market and to contribute for your country. Thank you for being here. Saron will have remarks for tomorrow's and Friday's session. Thank you for all being here.